Thank you.
So Rujuta, shall I go on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Okay.
very well.
Clearly.
Yeah, so I'll just talk about management of acute unstable slips and the pitfalls and how I do it. So I feel a surgeon slips and falls on his face if he misses a mild slip, if he manipulates an unstable slip or a chronic slip, if he creates avian or chondrolysis, or leaves behind a large deformity which is going to cause arthritis. So an acute slip is an abrupt displacement to the proximal facial cartilage in which there was pre-existing epiphysiolysis, which is about 10% of all slips. Usually you will have a short history of less than 2 to 3 weeks duration, but about 75% will have a prodromal history of about 2 to 3 months with a little limp or a minor trauma. So it's best to call most of them acute and chronic who have mild weakness or limp prior to that acute episode. Physically, usually the pain prevents examination and you shouldn't be very aggressive or forceful when you are examining, but there'll be marked restriction of rotation, especially medial rotation. And remember, examination can make the slip worse. So try not to manipulate. Defining unstable slips has been really difficult. Lauder called clinically inability to bear weight as being unstable. On ultrasound, if there is effusion, on X-ray, if there is absence of metaphyseal remodeling, and intraoperatively, if you have minimal callus and it's highly mobile, then these are unstable slips. However, many stable hips have been noted to be unstable once you open them. The Klein's line is a useful line for all the general orthopods where you have a widened irregular facial plate, decreased height of epiphyses as compared to opposite side, and you draw the line. So don't miss a mild slip. And the frog leg view gives you a correct orientation of the slip. However, doing the frog leg can also be a little bit bothersome, or it may exaggerate the slip or increase the angle. The optimal treatment for acute unstable slip should be technically simple to minimize iatrogenic avian, minimize chondrolysis, should not leave behind residual deformity, and should not compromise prosthetic replacement for the future if it happens. So when does avian happen? Avian is seen in unstable acute slips, over-reduction of unstable slips, trying to reduce a chronic slip, putting pins in the supralateral epiphysis, or in cases where you had to do a neck osteotomy. Chondrolysis again has been seen with manipulative reduction, long duration of immobilization, realignment osteotomies, or pin penetration. So these are the two villains which we have to be afraid of and should not be causing them by ourselves. The slip angle of less than 30 degrees has a very minimal risk of avian and minimal functional restriction. So the primary treatment that should be considered is an in situ pinning. An anterior osteoplasty may be considered in addition. So this is an example where an in situ pinning has been done on the left side, which went on to satisfactory healing, but you can see that there is a mild cam on the anterolateral head part. You can add an osteoplasty to address that in mild slips, where you can put an in situ slip. If you're good at arthroscopy, you can just burr it off, or a small mini anterior approach and trim that part so that you don't leave behind the cam deformity. Moderate to severe slips, what has become popular is the GANS modified Dunn procedure through a safe surgical dislocation approach. A transtrochanteric surgical dislocation, check the blood flow, and then take down the stable trochanter and resect the callus. So developing the posterior long flap is the key to preventing avian. So this is a modified Dunn procedure through a safe surgical dislocation approach, which has gone to a successful outcome. Severe unstable slips, this is how it looks intraoperatively. And then this is how it has, after the callus has been resected and the head is reduced onto the neck. And that is how the reduction looks. My choice, however, has been inspired from Parsh and my comfort from the anterior part. His method of doing an open reduction with a smooth fixation for unstable slips. So the anterolateral approach and an anterior arthrotomy in unstable slips, which Parsh has published, where he got a partial reduction, reduced the angle, maybe resected a little neck and pinned it. So the safe surgical dislocation, which is becoming so popular, is it a panacea? There is a big learning curve. We have spoken to the experts and they say it's about 50 cases. The time for surgery is more, the blood loss is more. And the question which why we call it safe is that did you really bring down the AVN rate? When you call it safe, it has to be safe. And what does the literature say? These are a few examples where it has been done and failed. Doing a shelf after that is no solution. This is again an example where the screws penetrated and broke. So there are problems which happen even with so-called safe surgical dislocation. If you look at literature published from the Boston group, complications of a modified Dunn's osteotomy, they had 37% complications and 15 revision procedures were performed. They found that intraoperative assessment of head perfusion does not correlate with postoperative AVN rates. And what they saw was when they did head drilling intraop, 5 patients, there was no bleeding, but only 1 underwent AVN. And 21 of them had brisk intraop bleeding, of which 9 developed AVN. So when you say that the head bled well, is no guarantee that AVN will or will not happen. It's pure conjecture. So what they have recommended is a high volume surgeon must be present doing the modified Dunn procedure, and they have modified their surgical indications. So what is the issue here? Is it disease determined AVN or surgeon created AVN? And what I thought was, can we make it simpler with the same results? So this is an example. We had a slip on the right side. He went away, did not accept treatment of surgery, and came back with a left-sided slip. And you can see the right side, how it has healed. So I'll just go through the steps of how I do it. I use the standard anterior Smith-Peterson approach. That's the interval between sartorius and tensor fascia lata. That is the rectus femoris from the anterior inferior iliac spine and the capsule of the acetabulum, which is detached. So you detach the rectus, and after detaching the rectus, you start with the capsulotomy. So the minute you do a capsulotomy, you can see the hematoma draining off immediately in an unstable acute slip. So it's important that we keep the leg in external rotation. At no time should you attempt to reduce or internally rotate the leg. Do the surgery with the leg externally rotated. The preparation has to be in external rotation. No forceful rotation should be done till we have made the neck osteotomy. So after the capsulotomy, immediately what you see in front of you will be the neck. So I make a 1 centimeter cut anteriorly, and as you can see, I just lever out the fragment, and you can see that it is already detached from the fascial side. Once the gap is created, the tension on the capsule, the tension on the posterior retinacular flap is relaxed. Then I use a small curette and scrape off the residual cartilage from the head side also. The head is lying posterior. I haven't seen it yet. But what I'm doing is creating a gap, scraping off the head. Posterior flap has not been seen, but I take a small anterior wedge, which is not going to interfere. So this is the amount of bone that is removed. You can see it's a triangular bit. One side is where it is abraded from the fascial side, and this is the cut that I have made. So just to put it pictorially, this is the amount of bone I remove. It's not so big, it's a smaller wedge, but the posterior retinacular vessels which are there, the anterior flap is already torn, as you know, with slip. But the posterior flap is intact, and this is the one which is supplying blood. So we take an osteotomy or a neck osteotomy anterior to that. It's a small triangular wedge, and we don't interfere or try to go in that region at all. And once that is done, the maneuver then is when the things are relaxed, you just gently flex the hip. Now the neck engages the head, which is lying posteriorly. Then I internally rotate and extend and bring this down. Now, when I do this maneuver, I have found each time that with the maneuver, the head comes back to its position. So you'll see when I do that on the C-arm, that's a longer shot or long view of what we are doing. And you see that the head has got relocated and the alignment of the head to neck becomes perfect. And now it's a simple matter of putting the pins from the lateral side percutaneously. So we can use a 32 mm or a full threaded. I use a stainless steel screw, a cannulated screw from Zimmer company. And at the end, as a routine, we do drill the head and see whether it bleeds. Again, as I said, we are happy if it bleeds, but it is no guarantee that AVN will or will not happen. That's just evidence of head bleeding. And that was the fixation. So these are the preliminary results of our 24 patients over the last 7 or 8 years, which we are writing up and publishing. So I won't go into the details for lack of time, but I'll just tell you that the anterior approach is a familiar approach to most surgeons because we use it for various surgeries in the hip. So our learning curve is already cut down. We do DDH from there. We do septic hip from there. We do osteoplasties from there. The capsulotomy decompresses the hematoma and relieves the pressure on the head. Then we are doing the neck osteotomy first, that's shortening the neck. Don't shorten it too much. Gentle reduction to correct the proximal femoral anatomy and fixation with cannulated screws through the front does very well. My average surgical time for this procedure has been 30 minutes. These are the results. I've had about 10% AVN rate in my series, and I've been pretty happy with what's happening. And I haven't seen the need to go from the safe surgical dislocation point so far. So I've been continuing to do this. And I think for the general orthopod or to the newbie, I think this is a very good approach. This is a case where we had AVN, sectoral AVN. We removed the screw, and over a period of time, he's done well eventually. So I think the anterior approach is a familiar approach with a shorter learning curve. The small cuneiform osteotomy corrects the anatomy pretty well. The only thing is we don't know preoperatively whether the head was avascular to begin with at all because we have not seen it or not drilled it before we reduced it. Most of the surgeons talk of drilling the head first, saying that, oh, it is dead, and then they discard their case from their series. Whereas we don't know what has happened to the vascularity. We reduce the anatomy indirectly, and we have had pretty good results. So what does literature say? There is a paper in 2018 from the French area, subcapital shortening osteotomy, preliminary result, a multicentric study, and they found that modified done osteotomy for a stable slip, which was done, the AVN rates were nearing 25 to 27%. In unstable slips, it was between 21 to 24%. This is what their paper said for modified done. But when they did it from anterior approach, they had 87% slip reduction and 13.3% AVN rate, which was pretty acceptable. This is what I have been doing. So this is exactly what I've been doing, and this is what 10 institutions and 15 surgeons across France have been doing. So to summarize, in a mild unstable slip, an in situ stabilization is gold standard. You may consider PARSH if you want to still reduce it, or better still, consider osteoplasty. For a moderate to severe unstable slip, the safe surgical dislocation approach, if you are familiar with it, with intraoperative monitoring of the head blood flow with callus resection as necessary. For a moderate to severe unstable slip, alternatively, you could do an anterior arthrotomy as I showed with a gentle open reduction and screw stabilization, or an osteoplasty of the anterior prominence if required. So again, to reiterate, a surgeon slips and falls if he misses a mild slip, manipulates an unstable slip or a chronic slip, or iatrogenically creates AVN or chondrolysis, or leaves behind a really large deformity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandeep. That was a very, very lucid talk. Kapil, how are we doing on time?
Another 7 minutes remaining, so we have time for question answers.
Yeah, so let's take 2 quick comments and then or questions, and then we go on to the next talk, which will be by Dr. Kapil Gangwal himself. Premal, Jayant, anything that you all want to bring out in this?
So I think, Urujita, I think this is a nice technique, but a lot of things happening blind. So I think safe surgical dislocation is called safe because you can dislocate safely without AVN. But that does not mean that the done procedure is safe. I think there are 2 different ways of putting the things together. It is a safe surgical dislocation operation in which you bring the femoral head out, but the done itself is it has its own risk. So I think the risk is of part of the done procedure and not of the safe surgical risk.
Premal bhai, I don't think we can explain to the patient why the AVN happened. It is because of done or whether safe surgical. When AVN happens, it happens.
Yeah,
What
I
I'm
agree.
saying is that the hoopla about safe surgical cut gives a wrong connotation of being safe. It's neither safe nor very easy. What I'm saying is we are familiar going in front, and the avian rates are 10% to 12%, which is from multiple places over the world. It's not my invention. I was just doing it. I think we need to rethink the philosophy of spending 3 hours and a lot of blood loss when you can do it very easily in 30 minutes.
So Sandeep, my question will be, what will be your approach for a stable sleep, which is moderate,
Yeah.
which there is no movement between the head and neck?
Yeah. So if it is a healed slip, maybe I'll put the in situ screw and just do an osteoplasty and come out. You can see it's in the large. See, I've done more than 40-50 now. What has happened is that only twice did I have an instance where I did the neck osteotomy and it refused to budge. You saw how the thing popped out because it is detached from the head side. Now, if it is healed to the head side, that piece doesn't come out. Then you have to make another cut towards the head side, and that makes the neck osteotomy. Okay, fortunately, in one case which I did that, I did not have avian, I just got away. But like I said, there is no guaranteed way that you can say that the head is healed or not healed, neither by imaging. It's usually intra-op. If next time, if I find that that thing is not popping out, probably I'll just trim the neck, put a screw and come out. Maybe that would be safer rather than doing a neck osteotomy. But I think, see, I've done over 40-50 cases now. I have sent these videos to Ashok. We are publishing it. We are sending it off the data. Ashok, are you here? Have you submitted it
So,
yet?
Sandeep,
Yes.
can you get to the bump in the front with your anterior approach? Because I find that the Watson Jones is probably because you're too high on the head with an anterior approach.
No,
I
it's
have found
very easy,
Watson Jones
Jay.
is
The
easier.
minute I do a capsulotomy, I put a small spike around the neck, front and back. So I'm around the neck intra-articular, and I have the whole neck in front of me. I just can't see the head, which is now lying posterior, and the posterior part is adherent to that neck part, where the vessels are lying. So I'm taking a very thin sliver from front and just an incomplete osteotomy. And when I flex the hip in the maneuver, probably there's some green sticking. There is already a collapse of the neck because I've shortened it. So it's detensioned. And once it locks in front and you bring the hip back down, the head which was back comes in front. You don't have to do anything. You'll see the head has come in front of you. Then you just put the screw and drill it and see. It's over before you know it.
So Sandeep, one more question. What is the difference between your technique and the fish osteotomy, which
I
was?
have no idea. Frankly, I
re-
haven't gone and dissected out what fish did. I just did this. I thought it was more logical and went by, and I improvised as I went along. Of course, when Prasad came and showed me modified, then it helped us understand anatomy better. So the safe surgical has made me refine my technique, but I'm still sticking to my technique because my avian rates are not any worse or better than what the world is doing. And I find this is very easy.
So Sandeep, just a quick question on the heads which did not bleed. How many of
Yeah.
them really went into the
Yeah.
AV and how many survived?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There is no direct correlation. Sometimes when I drill the head for a couple of seconds, there is nothing happening, and then sort of a bone marrow or sort of a reddish serosanguinous fluid comes in, and I thought ye sala dead hone wala hai, but that didn't go to AVN. And sometimes the brisk ones, which I thought this is really good, have also gone. So overall, of all these 24 that I'm studying, I had 3 AVNs.
Okay.
So
And the head
rest of them have done well. So I think it's just 10%. Now, what I'm saying is the burn group, when they drill it pre-reduction, they say, oh, this is disease-related avian. Surgeon has not created. I am safe. I don't know. Maybe it was dead to begin with here.
Okay. Sure, interesting.
Okay.
So thank you, Sandeep. That was an excellent